Hello everybody, Preacher Bill here today again. So we are back at the former Ward's Corner, Ohio Frisch's location. I wanted to come back over here today again and do another video. And this part of the video I'm filming mainly just on the chance that whoever owns this property, the people that own it, just on the chance that this property, the building, the former Frisch's Ohio restaurant, just on the chance that this building would end up getting demolished by the people that own the real estate. So I want to come back over again and do another video today. So for this part of the video, I'm just going to take a short walk around the front and the parking lot and show you what it looks like. So when I did work here, this is one of the things I would do in the morning. I would come into work this way. This is the front sidewalk. I would come into work this way, and once I got here after I clocked in, I would come outside and I would sweep the front sidewalk, the front entryway, which is right here, and I would sweep the parking lot because people would leave clutter and bags and garbage and stuff in the parking lot. And I'd sweep this part of the parking lot, which is the front section of the parking lot. I'd sweep all this, pick up all the trash and stuff that people would leave out of their cars. They'd throw bags and stuff on the ground. So I would come out in the morning and sweep all this. And that was one of my duties in the morning. And as I've mentioned in other videos, this is the drive-through lane. And I also would come and periodically I would scrub this down with a deck brush, especially right out here outside of the drive-through window. I would scrub this down with a deck brush and clean the parking lot. And I'll just give you one more sweep of the side parking lot. And this is the side parking lot of the former Ward's Corner, Ohio Frisch's, as you can see. This is the right section of the front of the parking lot. I'm going to give you another view of it from the corner of the parking lot, another view of the building. So let me walk over here and I'll give you another view of it. So this is the view of the former Ward's Corner, Ohio Frisch's. This is a view of the building from the edge of the parking lot. This is what it looked like. That's the entryway to the restaurant coming off of 275, which is behind me. And something that sticks out to me here is, if you look up here, this is the Soooooo's towing sign. And just to show you how old it is, all of the writing is completely faded out on this sign. The only thing you can see now is the name of the company, which is Soooooo's Towing, which they're still in business, but just goes to show you how long this place has been empty and to some extent abandoned, because the only thing you can see on the Soooooo's Towing sign is literally the name of the company that Frisch's used for towing when they would have people's cars towed if someone left an abandoned car in the parking lot or something like that. But just the fact of how faded this sign is, all the writing on it is completely faded out except for the name of the towing company, which was Soooooo's. So, like I said, this is the former Ward's Corner, Ohio Frisch's. I do want to walk down here for a second. Most of the time when I'd come in the morning, I would park in this part of the parking lot, which is the far right side of the rear of the parking lot. Most of the time I would park over here in this section, and this is where I would park, and then I'd get out and clock in and do my work for the day. This is another view of the rear of the parking lot. And as I said in the other video the other day, when we would get truck deliveries, this is where the trucks would deliver, would be in this section of the parking lot. The semis would park right here, and then we would unload everything onto the parking lot off of the truck, and then we would haul it in the back door, which is right there. I want to take a look at this little sign that's on the drive-through speaker. So this was the drive-through speaker where people would order their food. That is the menu board, and as you can see, it's been stripped of all the menus. It's been this way for a long time. So this is where people would order their food, but notice the sign here, Big Boy Rewards. Well, it's not going to apply at this location anymore. And I want to look in here again in the corral. So I don't know if it's locked or not. Okay. I came up here the other day and I didn't look to see if it was locked, but it's not locked. So you can see some of the equipment they used when the restaurant was in operation. These are a lot of the pans and things they used in there for cooking. I'm not sure what that is, some kind of machine for the kitchen. But these were all the bread racks and everything that they used in the coolers and in the back section of the restaurant. And as you can see, this has been sitting this way for a long time. So this is the corral where they stored everything after the restaurant permanently closed. Let me shut the gate back. I'm going to take one more walk around the outside of the other side of the building. This is the dumpster. Nothing here, obviously. A little bit of trash out here. You can just see how old and rusty this thing is. Hasn't been used in a long time. It's old and rusty. This thing hasn't moved in 2 years because this restaurant has been permanently closed since December 2024. And this dumpster has not moved in 2 years. It's been sitting here. So continuing walking around the outside, this is the other side of the restaurant, and this is the part of the drive-through lane of this side of the restaurant. People would come in this way and they would drive around this part of the building, and they would continue around the back here, and then they would go through the drive-through lane, which is right here, which is what I said a minute ago. That's where people would order their food, at the drive-through speaker. When I did work here, I remember one particular occasion where somebody was coming through here ordering food, and they were driving a box truck. And box trucks have very high roofs on them. And I remember at the time that somebody came through here one time to order food at the drive-through, and they were driving a box truck, and they hit this railing up here because the roof of the truck exceeded the clearance of the drive-through, and they ran into this, and they sort of bent it and pushed it forward. And after that happened, it stayed that way. But again, we'll continue to walk around the other side of the building. As I mentioned in the other video, I'll just say briefly, you can see all the overhangs are all faded out because this place has sat dormant for so long. Hasn't had any business in a couple years because it's been closed for so long. And you can see the overhangs are all faded out. So I'm going to take one last view of the front sidewalk and the entryway. And this is the front sidewalk and the entryway where you would come into the restaurant and customers would come in. That's all for this part of the video. Part 2 is coming up in just a moment. All right, everybody, so this is the second part of the video. And in this video, what I want to do is I want to basically give you a monologue of the time frame and the history of this Frisch's location, which was the Ward's Corner, Ohio Frisch's location. But what I want to do is just give you a time frame of the events and ultimately what led to the eviction and the closure of this Frisch's location, which permanently closed in December 2024. So I want to go back through the timeline and do sort of a monologue, so to speak. So from what I understand, this store was built in 1990, and so it opened in 1990 or 1991. As I've said in other videos, the first time that I worked at this store was from 2007 until April of 2011. The manager at the time was a man named Martin O'Connor, who has since passed away, but he was the manager that I worked for, and he was a good boss. He did a good job. He was fair with people. He expected you to work and do your job, but he was fair with people. And I think personally, he was an excellent manager. And so when I worked here the first time, the manager I worked for was a man named Martin O'Connor. In April of 2011, I ended up leaving and I went and sought other employment. And for a few years, I worked at warehouses. Going forward in the timeline, about 8 years later, I ended up coming back here, and I worked here until July of 2022, the second time. And the manager that I worked for at that time was a woman named Leanne, who also was a good manager. She did an excellent job. She was fair with you. She expected you to do your job, but she was fair with you, and she would always jump in and help anybody and everybody anytime they needed it. And she was the second boss I had when I worked here the second time, and her name was Leanne. In April of 2022, Leanne ended up leaving the company for personal reasons, which she disclosed to me at the time, which I completely understood. So in April of 2022, the manager that I had had for almost 3 years ended up leaving. After Leanne left, the assistant manager at the time was a man by the name of Greg Rader. And during the influx of Leanne's departure and Frisch's trying to get a new GM, the assistant manager, whose name was Greg Rader, was sort of trying to run the restaurant, but he did a very poor job. As bosses and managers go, I'd say he's probably one of the worst that I've ever worked for in my entire working life. And I've had a lot of different jobs, and this man, Greg Rader, was probably the worst boss and the worst manager I've ever seen during all the jobs that I've ever had during the whole of my working life. So when Leanna left in April, Frisch's made Greg the assistant GM sort of during the influx because they were trying to find a permanent GM. Well, Greg Rader, long and short of it is, he got frustrated because Frisch's corporate would not give Greg Rader the GM position. He wanted it, but Frisch's corporate would not give it to him. And I hear from a reliable source that at the time, because of this situation, basically because Greg Rader was not given the GM position, in the middle of a shift one day, he just left and stormed out, which left this location with no manager at all. After that happened, one of the servers, who is a friend of mine, whose name is Chanel, she had worked here for probably 20 years altogether, from the time she started working here until this place closed down. And Chanel had been here for a lot of years, probably 20 years, I bet. And so during the influx, when all of this was happening, Chanel basically ran the restaurant. She was a server, but she was running the restaurant. And she had keys to the building. And Chanel worked here from, I believe, 2002 all the way up until its permanent closure, which happened in December of 2024. A friend that I did have working here also at the time was a girl named Tabby, who, since this place has been closed for 2 years, Tabby has since been working at the Hartwell, Ohio Frisch's in Cincinnati. Finally, after the evictions and the money problems that Frisch's suffered as a company and were struggling to pay their bills, finally, this place permanently closed in December of 2024. Another friend of mine that worked here, whose name is Lisa, she was here up until the end with Chanel, and she has conveyed to me, and you can also see it on her own Facebook page. She posted at the time in December 2024, on the 15th of December, she posted on her Facebook page, and this is facts, this did actually happen, that Frisch's corporate stopped paying their suppliers. They stopped paying the towel company that they used, which was Cintas. From what I understand, they stopped paying their electric bill because Duke Energy started calling the restaurant wanting to know who was in charge of paying the bill and getting it up to date. So Frisch's not only stopped paying their towel company, which was Cintas, they stopped paying their electric bill, which was through Duke Energy. And while all of this was happening, their food supplier they started using was Sysco Foods. And the reason that happened was because Frisch's corporate shut down their commissary in December of 2024, and their commissary was located down in Cincinnati. So when Frisch's corporate shut down the commissary, none of the locations could get their supplies and the food they needed to keep the restaurant running. So what Frisch's ended up doing ultimately was they started using Sysco Foods to supply their food needs. Ultimately, because of all this, it created sort of a perfect storm, so to speak. And that's why this and many other Frisch's locations ultimately permanently closed. It was a perfect storm that started many years back in 2015 when Craig Meyer, who owned the company and was the son-in-law of the man that started Frisch's, Dave Frisch, and Craig Meyer, who was the CEO and GM and the owner of the company, he sold it to NRD Capital in 2015. So this is all of what happened, and in particular what happened at this particular location, the Ward's Corner, Ohio Frisch's. Permanently closed, and as I've said in other videos, has been permanently closed since December 2024. It's a little ironic that I'm talking about this today and there's actually stormy weather. You can see it's a little overcast. Look up, you can see it's a little overcast clouds, and it rained earlier. So it's sort of ironic that I'm doing this video about this, which ended up being the perfect storm, which ended up closing this location. And it's actually storming outside today. You can hear a little bit of the thunder. You can see the clouds are overcast. But I wanted to do this video today, first and second part, because if this place does end up getting demolished by the people that own the land, I wanted to have some video and pictures of what it used to look like and what it used to be. So that's all for now. Have a good day.